Hello everyone in Sledland. I'm going to do a video on removing and cleaning the carburetor from a 600 HO, 2004 600 HO Ski-Doo MXZ Adrenaline. I'm sure this process applies to many, a whole range of Ski-Doos from, early 2000s on up. I'm not sure exactly which ones it applies to, but I'm sure you could probably take a look at yours and see if the carb looks similar, and the process is probably the same for others as well. So anyway, I'm sure it will be useful or helpful for a lot of you out there. And so let's see, actually I'm going to do two videos. I'll do one video on removing the carb and a separate video on actually taking the carb apart and cleaning it. So this one right here will be removing the carb. Okay, so let's get started. So to begin with, first remove the belt cover. Anything that's in the way, get out of the way. That's pretty much the only thing that is in the way. It's just the belt cover. It would help a little bit if the secondary clutch was off, but there's no need to go that far here. The toughest thing is just getting the airbox out, but that does slide out even with the clutch on. So that is the first thing to do then, is remove the airbox. Now it helps to have it's a 2-foot long shank Phillips head. The only thing holding the airbox on is the boots that are on the intake side of the carbs. So really all you have to do there is loosen the clamps to hold that on and give them a good spin to make sure they're good and loose. Make sure you can move the clamp around. Good, and then feel you don't want to pull the screw all the way out. Leave about maybe a 1/4 of an inch or so of the tail end of the screw sticking out. Well, you can feel on this one. The one on the other side is going to be tougher, tougher to see how far. But give it a few spins, quite a few spins actually, and that should free up the airbox right there. Yep. And now with that removed, you can slide it right out. There's your airbox. Set that aside. Okay, now notice this breather tube. It's not even on. Somebody removed it for us, or something removed it for us. Not sure how big a deal that is or was, but it'll go back on when I put it back together. But that is the next step now, is to pull the breather tubes. This is easy enough. You just pull on it. Don't want to tear the tube or anything. Just make sure when you're pulling that it's actually going towards pulling the tube off. And now just whatever you can get out of your way, it's best to get out of your way. Next thing now is to get the throttle cable, remove the throttle cable and the choke cables off. And for that, I think it's a 10mm wrench. You do need a 10mm box wrench, and actually preferably 2 is best. What you want to do is both the throttle and the choke cables are secured down with jam nuts on the top and the bottom of this bracket that's on the carb. Now what you need to do is, you could try just with one box wrench loosening the bottom one, and if If it spins off, great. At some point it becomes just finger tight and you can spin it off. But you may need to hold the top nut with another box wrench while you're loosening off the bottom. I already just loosened this one up, but so that's what you want to do there. Once it's loose, you can spin it off with your finger. So start loosening it, spin it most of the way off, or spin it, you can spin it just a little ways off. Now the next part's a little tricky. What you want to do is manually do what the throttle would do when you're pushing the throttle. Or you can actually push the throttle, and that picks this cam all the way up. Now the cable is just locked in at the bottom. If you pull on the cable now down a little bit, it's got slack in it now, you can just slide the cable out. You can unlock, you can free it up from the cam. There's just a plastic, freeze up here, and then you can just let the cam back down. There's just, if you can see here, I can't really get my camera in here any closer, but you can see there's just, it's basically the cable. At the end of the cable, it's terminated with basically just an aluminum, I don't know what you'd call it, little basically aluminum termination, a lock at the end, and that slides into the end of the cam. And once you free that up, you can now spin the nut all the way off, and you don't have to worry about losing the nut, because the aluminum pin on the end will hold the nut on. Now what you can do at that point is slide the entire threaded part up above the level of the bracket, and then it will all just slide out. So this is what you're left with. Easier to see now. And just set that out in front of this frame piece here to get it out of the way. And that would be the same with the choke. Maybe I can loosen, better luck with this. Yep, I didn't need the second wrench on that one. Pretty much just loosened right off just by loosening the one, which is good now, because now I know I can get it right back in the same position. And again, don't pull it all the way off yet. Just lift up. Same concept really, slightly different design over here, but the concept is the same. You can use the choke again to lift it up and then release it. So with one finger, hold that cam and push down on the cable, and it should, again, it's got an aluminum pin on the end, and it should just slide out, and the choke cam just slides back down, and it's the same thing. It's got an aluminum pin on the end, termination, whatever you want to call it. Spin the nut off, lift the threaded part out, and that's what you're left with. Again, you can push this up out of the way. Try not to kink or bend the cable, that would be bad. Fatigue it. Okay, so now we got that. The next part involves disconnecting the coolant lines. I don't know, for those of you that don't know, this carb on the Ski-Doos is actually heated. Most of the time, most people just keep the valve off, so there's really no coolant flowing through there normally. But you can open this valve in conditions where it's very cold, or I guess if you're getting snow blown into your front end from whoever you're riding behind, I guess you're supposed to open this up and let some coolant flow through the carb to keep it from freezing up. So in this case the valve's closed, but nonetheless you need to disconnect these coolant hoses, and if you just went ahead and disconnected them now, coolant will flow back through the fill jug, through the container where you fill the coolant. It will flow back through here and you'll have a mess of coolant. Not to mention I have dogs and I do not want to get coolant on my garage floor or anywhere for that matter that they can smell it. They would probably lick it up, and I don't think I need to tell you what would happen if they licked it up. So with that, the next step is actually to siphon out some of the coolant just below the level of where it can enter in, and you'll see there's a hose over on the other side. So let's get to the next step. Okay, so as I was saying, the next step is to you want to siphon out well, most of the coolant that's sitting in the reservoir. Actually, not most of the coolant that's in the sled. Most of it's circulated through the system, but you want to get it below the level of where it's connected to the carb. There's a little spout here on the bottom. You can see it. It's hard to see from the camera right now, but you'll see down here there's a hose clip connection onto a little stub spout on the bottom of the coolant tank. Now just open up the tank, and you want to make sure a couple things. You want to make sure you got a good tube for siphoning. Actually, this one's a little short. Slightly longer would be better because you want to be able to drop it down to the bottom of the tank and siphon it out into something. The other thing you want is some kind of container to contain it in and be able to close it. You don't want any of this coolant getting excuse me, on the floor of your garage, especially if you have dogs. And in this case, I do. So gotta be very careful. If you get some on the floor, you want to wipe it right up. This stuff is very toxic. So first thing, this is my little siphon starter here. Old mustard jar. Anything works that you can pull air with. I don't have anything really fancier than that. So anyway, get this tubing down into the tank. Get it right to the bottom. And then, so this will reach just barely again. I'll get it started with this. Just squeeze some air out. Suck it in. And almost. There we go. And it's spinning out now. Continuing to flow out, and you can see, since it's green in color, you can see it coming out, and once it's below the level of that spout, you can stop draining it. It's almost there. Just coming out kind of slow right now. And here we go. I'm almost at the bottom. May as well drain out towards the bottom. I don't want any coming out, so okay. That's good. It's below the level now, so it should be good. I shouldn't have any spilling out except for what's in the hose when I go to actually do this. So again, Be careful here, any drips or anything you want to kind of contain. So I'll just put this, I'll just jam both ends of this in, and of course your container you want to have a lid for, which I do. I did find the lid for this. It's somewhere. So, there it is. So I'll cap this off and set it aside. Now with the coolant drained out below the level of the carb hose, the hose coming from the carb into the reservoir, what you want to do is disconnect the hose from the reservoir. So this has one of your standard hose clamps on here. It's a little tough to get to. Actually, with the exhaust removed, probably be easier, but I just reach in here with some pliers. You want to get pliers with a good wide tip on them. Needle nose won't really work because on the clamp you got to grab, on one side there's a one clip, on the other side it's the two. So you reach in there with pliers, squeeze the clip, and then you can kind of walk the clip down the hose, or try pushing the hose off with a flathead, or push on the clip with the flathead, and then you should be able to get the hose off. I've already slid the clamp down a little bit here, so I should just be able to, the hose should just slide off at this point. May take a little bit of a push here. It's coming off. There we go. And there's going to be a little more coolant draining out. Just a little bit drains out, and it ends up, keep looking down to make sure it's not on the floor, but I think that little bit of coolant probably just ends up on the pan, the belly pan of the sled. So, appears to be done. And now there really wasn't much, just literally a few drops, a quarter of an ounce or something like that. So I think we're safe there. Okay, so now to move back over to the other side. Okay, so now that you got the hose disconnected from the reservoir side of the carb, or the mag side, you want to disconnect the coolant line from the other side, or the PTO side here. And rather than loosen up this hose clamp here that's directly holding the hose onto the carb, it should be easier, I think will be easier to disconnect the hose from the valve side, right from this valve fitting. So I've already just slid this clamp down with some pliers. I'm going to try, these things can be, after they've been on here a while, can kind of lock themselves on pretty good. So I'm going to, with a smaller flathead, I'm going to try prying it away from the valve assembly, the fitting. And once it starts, it should work with you. Just got to work from all sides here. You can get the, definitely want to start with a smaller thin flathead, otherwise it's tough to get in there, and then you can work your way up to a bigger flathead. Oops. And it should start prying off. There we go. Should just about pull off right now. And sure enough. And really there should be no coolant coming out now because, well, first of all, this valve's off, and second of all, we've drained it all out, so there really shouldn't be any residual coolant. So there, that was easier. I think that loosening this hose clamp and trying to get the hose off of this thing would have been tougher. There's really nothing to pry against, and also the carb isn't even being held rigidly right now. It's the only thing holding it on really is the boots onto the engine side. So that's definitely the way to go. Remove it from the valve side. So now the next step is to free the carb right off of the engine side. Just basically free up the boots holding it on. It's really almost the only thing still holding it. After that, the only thing left is the fuel line. So similar to taking the air box out, you want to take your long Phillips and just loosen the clamps up that are holding the carb boots onto the engine block. And again, keep track. Don't back the screw off too much. There's quite a bit of play there, so you can spin it out pretty far. And again, you gotta really have a longer shanked Phillips to do this. Helps a ton. Otherwise, you'll be really fighting to get some space in there as far as access. And you can back it out pretty far there without having to worry about the screw coming all the way out. You just don't want to back the screw all the way out because you want to retain the ring. If the screw pops out, it's going to be just a little bit of work to get it back in. So at this point, I have just noticed that one of my carb boots is torn. And that's another reason for doing this kind of stuff, because you will discover problems. I am very glad I discovered that. So if you look right here on the white, actually get it right in here. There's a tear right there in the carb boot. That is supposedly kind of a known issue with these particular Ski-Doos. So anyway, this video is not about repairing that. So I'm going to continue on, just knowing that at some point I have to replace that carb boot. So if you got any suggestions about that or where to get them, I would love to hear it. I haven't had to deal with this issue before, so I assume I can pick those up, hopefully for a reasonable charge. So anyway, continuing on, I'm gonna, hopefully I won't tear that carb boot out completely. And it looks like that is what's going to happen. Boy, that thing is torn right up. I'm going to end up tearing it right off, which really won't matter because it needs to be replaced anyway. Boy, look at that. Thing wants to come right off. I still prefer to just get the boot off of the carb. Maybe I can help by prying against carb a little bit. Yeah, looks like that might do it. I can just grab the little pressure on the hose there. I think there we go. So this side popped out, and now hopefully it'll. Yep, it's already popped out from the other side. Let's see, I'm thinking since that one boot is torn, sure enough, boy, that is not good. I have heard that that can help you destroy your engine, so I hope it's not to that part yet. And the funny thing is, my son was telling me, my son's the one who rides this mostly. He was telling me he felt like the sled was losing power. So now I'm starting to see why. Well, we'll see. I'll have to fix that up. So now, sorry to get sidetracked there. I know this video is about removing the carb and cleaning. The only other thing holding on the carb is the fuel line. So this one shouldn't be too bad. Basically, it's just a green hose clamp there. You can squeeze from this side, from the middle. Squeeze the clamp. Slide it back if you can. Always a trick. There we go. It's sliding back. Flathead. Okay, I can get in there now. Because it's the valve fitting on this side can actually move, rotates. So you kind of want to hold it when you do this. It's like a mid-size flathead here. I should be able to get it now. There we go. It's starting to free up. And there you go. So it doesn't look like any fuel is coming out. Oh, take that back. Here comes a little fuel right now. Try to jam that up there. I'm actually going to plug that off. I'll stick a bolt in it and slide the clamp back up on it. But anyway, here's the carb all freed up. So that is how you remove the carb. And I guess the bonus part of that video is that's also how you discover that you have torn carb boots. Both of them are actually torn. So I got another problem to fix. So anyway, so watch part 2, actually disassembling and cleaning the carb, which would be the whole purpose of removing the carb, right? Okay, thanks for watching.